One of the interesting things I thought about the film was, which I thought was fascinating, was the construction of it. And it was your ability to actually find so many wonderful kind of poignant places in which to make the film. For example, I was struck by one of the sequences in Holland, and there is, at the time of harvest, to have apples being picked by Polish migrant workers, and then behind is the railway with the containers. It's those moments that I thought was just tremendous. And of course, but I'm interested in, my question is how did you go about finding those places which fitted the film essay so well?
Well, most of these places were the result of a theoretical decision. That's a good example actually, we absolutely wanted to have an orchard with, there are always immigrant laborers picking the fruit today actually, and a train going by, okay? So we looked and we found the right place, got the farmer's agreement. Actually, I went and shot that long before we began the actual shoot because there was only a very short time when it could be done, and so on. No, I think there's very little improvisation in this film. Although, being on the spot, it is absolutely true that the shot where the train comes through, we were taken by surprise. Because this line, as I think we indicate, hardly runs. There are 3-4 trains a day, and you never know when they're coming. We had portable phones talking to the dispatching office and everything, but they were never right. And the trains arrived, we once waited 5 hours for a train that never came. Another shot, that mammoth shot, you know. Finally, when the train came, it was a locomotive pushing them. It was just a locomotive by itself. So, I mean, but it was all, you know, we had enough money to get what we wanted, but we had decided to have ahead of time.
Thank you. Some questions? Yes, sir.
Well, first, I think you should regard it as a compliment that nobody wants to buy a film, not a critique of your film. However, there is a point which I would like to criticize, and that is the comment by one of white man from Hong Kong who claims, completely wrongly, that Chinese were never ocean-going nation. As is known to everybody who studied the history of the 19th century and imperialist expansion of Europeans in other parts of the globe, Chinese were banned to have their ship harbor in North American harbors, in other harbors of the British Empire, and so on and so on. And this was one of the causes of Opium War. And after the Opium War, Hong Kong was established precisely to cut down all traditional Chinese ports, Shanghai being one of them. So the principal reason why now Hong Kong is losing battle with Shanghai and other Chinese ports is that they, Shanghai and the others, are more natural ports than Hong Kong itself, as you have very well illustrated in your movie. Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you because I'm absolutely incompetent to discuss these questions. That's more Allan's domain. Simply, I think that what this historian we consult, who happened to get into the film, is talking about is the how should I say, is how in general in China, thinking about the sea, if you like, you understand, it was a, I mean, I think, as far as I know, he's probably to a large extent correct. In historical terms, the Chinese were concerned with what was going on inside. I mean, I think he is a rather eminent historian of the question, but it's something I really can't argue about at all. I'm sorry. It's not my field. I'm a filmmaker.
Well, it is a fact of history, just like, for instance, the French Revolution happened in 1789. The Columbus traveled and so yeah. This is not the point of interpretation. There are other things.
No, I'm sure, but I can't. As I say, I'm not.
This is materially wrong. So my good advice to you is to correct. Okay.
Well,
you may take
it's a little late.
End of the story.
It's a little late.
Someone else.
I don't need a microphone.
Okay.
I was just interested in how you gained the confidence of some of the people who you interviewed, because clearly the overall effect of the film is to critique, you know, some of the industries who've allowed you inside. So I was just really interested in how you ended up gaining the confidence of some of those industrial organisations in the first place.
Which industrial organisation? I'm not sure I understand.
I was just wondering what kind of film you indicated to the industries that you were making, who sort of
yes, I understand your question. Well, to be honest, we didn't tell them anything about it. It's obvious. I mean, for example, Hanjin, the ship owner, which Allan had dealt with them before. He'd done photos in their shipyards in Korea or whatever, and had contact with them and asked him if he could travel on this ship with our crew, because I wasn't on that journey. I get seasick, and whether or not and he didn't really say what the film was about, obviously, and so he did it and so on. I don't know if they've seen the film yet. I doubt it. Maybe they never will, maybe they will, I don't know. The film was shown actually in a festival in South Korea. Similarly, what would be the other? Yes, well, the factory. The factory we shot in, they asked for a final cut, rather presumptuously, and the producers just said no, and that was the end of that. I don't know if the film has been sent to them. I mean, you know, I'm not even sure they would necessarily understand what we're on about. But in any case, no, there was never any question of explaining. The only person I think well, obviously there's this Chinese Marxist on the UCL campus. He knows exactly what the film was about. And aside from, the Green deputy in Holland, she knew what the film was about. But beyond that, no. I mean, it isn't. Actually, we interview people who are not in the film, who I think understood what we were on about, but who viewed this thing so positivistically that, I mean, it's, there are people who think that all this is just sort of an accident of history, right? I mean, sort of, there's no class responsibility and so on. So, there's ways also of reading the film sort of the wrong way, in a sense, even the finished film, I would say. However, if you look, I think it's on our website, you will see the review that appeared in Variety, yeah? And there we're back in the Cold War. It's very, very, I mean, it's amazing. In fact, it is so outspokenly reactionary, and but on the whole, no, I mean, it's absolutely true that we didn't bother to tell these people what we were on about. It's absolutely true. Well, you find that's dishonest or something?
No, I was just really intrigued that you've been allowed such wide access, that was all, and it amazed me that people had allowed you inside. Oh,
people, they always figure it's good PR, I mean, whatever. In a way, I think even if they really understood what our philosophy was, I mean, Ken, the Hong Kong businessman, who has this very ambiguous condescension toward the poor working people of China who are devoting themselves, sacrificing themselves for the future and that kind of nonsense. Well, I mean, we had dinner with him and so on, and he knows what we're on about. He certainly does. But, he's making a lot of money out of all this, and what does he care? and he always, he was interested in it. And showing he understood very well the whole situation. He does. He's a key figure in the whole deal out there. He has something like 40, 50 factories working for him. So, it's funny about that. The rich don't really worry about what their adversaries think, because they know they got the upper hand. I mean, I would put it that way, I think.
Any other questions? Yes, if you could share.
An expansion on your first question. I'm just curious how much you actually effectively storyboarded or scripted the journey metaphorically and really, and how much of the story actually came up while you were on location.
Can I just repeat the question? How, to what extent was the
pre-scripted?
Yes, to what extent was the film scripted and kind of storyboarded, or did it just kind of evolve as you were making it?
So I think it's a great metaphor, if you like, this journey, this ship journey, obviously in this round trip, if you like. But I'm just curious how much of the story material actually came up on the fly.
Well, that's a good example. We only, the ship thing, we sort of vaguely assumed that we were going to use it as a recurrent material in the film. I mean, but the actual ways divided up into work and leisure and so on was something that came in the editing. Well, I would say that on the whole, I mean, to say it's storyboarded, no, that's a little too much, but certainly it was, finally when we started shooting, it was more or less planned. I mean, the whole thing was, well, that's not entirely true. For example, Allan's trip to California, basically he shot a lot of stuff which we hadn't even thought about before. The homeless camp by the railway, for example. No, I think that a lot of it was, that particular part was particularly improvised. He was there alone. I was busy editing because the Austrians had insisted I edit part of it we'd already shot to see if we could really make a film. They didn't believe it. So I was in Holland. But yeah, that was fairly improvised. The things in Holland were much less so and were really very much ahead of time because we don't speak the language. We don't really know the country, and our producers sort of, got hold of people as well, most of whom we had to jettison because they were terrible. But nonetheless, we were sort of in their hands, whereas Allan in California was on his turf, and therefore was able to improvise more and brought back things which had not really been planned. We know vaguely that we wanted a truck driver and we wanted union people and so on, but we didn't have it all that worked out ahead of time. Whereas in China, we went there 3 times before we shot, trying to find the right factory, etc. You see, so we had really worked out to a good extent what we wanted to do. I have to say, we had a camera person on the second part, on the last 3 parts of the shoot actually, who was very upset that everything wasn't really planned out in advance. Oh, we should have come here last week, see how we're going to shoot this. I said, yeah, but we're here now, so we got to shoot. It was very bizarre, actually, from my point of view. I never encountered that before. That's the GPO side of the Austrian business. But I would say, it's a compromise between the planning and the improvisation. That's what any film is like that. I mean, you try. We had a script which was totally different from this film. The original script had nothing to do with what you see here. So that was written in about 99, 2000, whatever, and it evolved. And then the film, compared with the last script, I think it's also quite different in that sense. So with elements which were there and elements which we suddenly decided we needed and stuff like that. There are things we had shot while we were already halfway through the editing, you see. Things like that, too.
I'm sure a lot changed in that 10 years, anyway, in terms of your content.
Sorry?
A lot changed in terms of the...
Oh, well, yeah, if it hadn't, I mean, it always has to. I mean, you can't. The days of independent frame are over, right? I mean, unless you're in the studio, and even then. No, I think that what I'm saying here is in a way banal for any kind of documentary. That's how you have to do it, I mean, no other way.
There was another one. Yes?
Yeah, whilst I recognise, obviously, flaws in capitalism is nothing new that's kind of been discovered in the last couple of years. I thought it was very interesting that for a film that took 9 years to make, how acute its conclusion tied in with some of the sort of social and economic issues we're having at the moment. And And yeah, I wondered if that was deliberate, if that was intended from the beginning, or if I understood the film correctly, how you started off trying to illustrate the struggle of like a small Belgian village, and sort of the film expanded as you made it to cover like the broader subject of sort of global like economic issues, basically. Is that something? My question essentially is: did you intend to go that deeply into the economics and like of global capitalism and the freight industry, or was it originally just intended to be about the village of Zidor, the Belgian village, anyway, and their struggle?
You want to read that?
What was the intention from the start to actually address the nature of global capitalism, or did you actually was the Belgian village a kind of starting point? So it's kind of its global reach, was that always part of the film's conception? Is that?
Well, two aspects of that question. On the one hand, yes, Dole was something that our producers found. They knew about because it's very near Holland that that's taking place, and it's something that they know about. And they sent us there, and we were, well, moved to tears, I have to say, by the plight of these people and the situation of this village. Which, by the way, parenthetically, is still hanging in the air in a way, because they obtained from the courts injunctions against these destructions, which are now found illegal. And consequently, the whole operation has been halted. I expect also because the crisis and all that, the money to build this new container terminal probably doesn't exist anymore. But anyhow, they're still sort of waiting to see if something will happen to save them. However, more generally, it's sort of interesting for us because, okay, when we conceived of this film in the early, around 2000 if you like, and up until 2005-07, we frankly thought we were talking about something which was never end. I don't mean never end, but as far as the eye could see, was here to stay, you know? The crash we've all been waiting for wasn't on the horizon at that point. Then, when we were actually shooting in Hong Kong, I should even say, what we almost found kind of a magic coincidence, when our first recce in Hong Kong, we couldn't get back to Europe because they'd blown down those towers. So that was already interesting. And then when we went to shoot, or our first, I don't know, maybe in our second recce in Hong Kong, I can't remember, boom, the crash, 2008, yes? And there was this big crash. We said, oh, wow, we got to change the film because it's all going to blow up, it's all going to, I mean, you know, it's the end of this stupid thing. I can't remember the name of the Marxist economist, Manuel somebody, can't remember his name, who, when the day after the big crash said, yes, well, this is the beginning of the end of capitalism, of this form of capitalism. So we believed this, and we stopped everything for about 3 months. We put off the shoot and everything to try and rewrite the script to take into account this new, yes, this new turning point. Well, we did to a small extent. But of course, then we quickly became aware that this was bullshit, that it was not going to end, and that they would, you know, I forget who says that capitalism, you know, is like the phoenix, it always rises from its ashes to fall again, and so on. These crises will get worse and worse. We know all that, but the fact of the matter is that, you know, in a sense, it didn't take much inflection of the original script to take into account what is going on now. I mean, the shot that we have, we were very happy to see this container ship with all empties, you know, riding high in the water, and which was a sort of visual sign of the crisis. The locomotives, the 137 locomotives, waiting for something to happen. But these were, you know, we were happy to pick up on these signs of what had happened since in 2008. But fundamentally, the film is about you know, what the fundamental problem, which is, of course, the logic of capitalism, which has been realized beyond the wildest dreams of Adam Smith, and which is obviously a disaster for the world in all sorts of ways. And that was there from the beginning, and there's no question, but what we just had to sort of add a few phrases here and there, if you like, to make it clear that we know what's going on. Yes, I think the film is indeed totally relevant today. What the gentleman here just said, that we should feel complimented about that, nobody wants it. I understand what you mean, but at the same time, one says that the media are basically there to make some money, you know, and therefore they should be interested in a film which should interest everybody, you know, really should interest everybody. Because I have to say, one of the things that most touched us in Venice was the reason the jury gave for the prize, because it wasn't because it's a great work of art and that crap. It was because of its analysis of work capitalism. And that, you know, I mean, for me, this is an agitprop film. It's not a work of art. And the fact that we're continually being shown in museums and places like that, which irritates me, it's going to be shown at the Tate in a couple of months. I mean, frankly, I mean, I won't go. I mean, I find that just, that's not what we made this film for. We made this film to be seen by a lot of people and to make them think about what's going on now in perhaps more basic terms. But for the moment, we're not there.
I'll take one more. Well, thank you very much, Noel. It's been very enlightening, and it's been terrific to see your film in Brighton. So thank you very much for coming.